Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 44 of The Squad Room. I'm your host, Garrett Tesla. I'm an active duty patrol sergeant in Southern California for a sheriff's department, and I have a in-studio guest today. So you don't have to deal with any of those Skype call problems that we sometimes have on the show. I want to welcome to the show Dr. I'm going to call you Dr. Ace, but you...
That works. Hey, that's my title. That's
an acronym, of course, for your full name, but we'll get to you, back to you in a second, but I just want to acknowledge the fact she's sitting right in front of me. If this is your first time listening to the show, this will be a good one. The Squad Room is about optimizing, developing, and maintaining the health and wellness of law enforcement officers and other first responders all over the world. Go to our website at thesquadroom.net to learn more about our past shows and the other guests we've had on. We've had some great ones recently, and you can sign up for our mailing list and get all the goodies that come with that, which is going to be expanding more and more, and some contests coming up soon too as well. So before we jump into learning about Dr. Ace, I want to also encourage you to check out our sponsors for this episode, audible.com. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get a free audiobook of your choice at audibletrial.com/The Squad Room. If you use that link to get to Audible, you get a free 30-day sign-up, a free audiobook, no obligation, and you help support the show. So check it out, audibletrial.com/The Squad Room. My recommendation for this week is Tribe by Sebastian Junger. Excellent book by a well-known war correspondent. I'll actually ask you, Dr. Ace, any books you're reading right now that you like?
Hey, I'm diving into the financial world, being a business owner. That's really what I'm focusing on right now. A little bit about Dave Ramsey.
Ah, yes.
The E-Myth, just some of the classics.
Dave Ramsey is a book I just finished not long ago, and then we actually had a cop on who's a financial planner as well, Jason Hashauer, a motor cop for everyone. I think he was episode 39 or something like that. But yeah, finance, that's a big thing for us as well too. All right, so welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and you can tell people basically what it is you do.
Sure thing. Yeah, it's always fun. So first and foremost, I'm a naturopathic medical doctor. So I'm acting as a doctor working on health, but I take a little bit of a different perspective. So as a naturopathic doctor, first and foremost, I'm looking at people from a broad perspective, trying to get them healthy in their entirety. I'm not a specialist. I'm not a cardiologist. I'm not a pulmonologist. I don't focus on one part of the body. I really look at everything as an integrated part, really trying to distill what's going on at the root level, what's causing the symptoms that they're having, so we can then figure that out, treat it, get them better, not keep them dependent on medications, dependent on seeing me, really lifestyle things to get them going and be healthier in their daily lives.
Okay, so I have a host of questions now because that sounds awesome, right? And forgive my ignorance, but I want to understand this completely. So did you go to like quote unquote med school, or is it a different med school? What's the path there?
Yeah, absolutely. So medical school, it was a naturopathic specific medical school. So same type of prereqs for your conventional medical school, your physics, your chemistry, your all that type of stuff. And then a 4-year medical program. So similar in that we're trained in your typical pathology, we're trained in pharmacology, we're trained in what your typical MD would be trained in. And then we also receive advanced training in nutrition, in botanical medicine, in homeopathy, in physical medicine, in traditional Chinese medicine, essentially a lot of different things that give us a really big toolbox for how we treat our patients.
So it's not like in place of a traditional MD, it's stuff that's above and beyond.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's because I ask because sometimes, I'm trying to give a good example, but chiropractors, I guess, it's a bad analogy, but they've gone through a medical school.
Sure.
They are doctors, but they're not medical doctors. So I'm just trying to make sure I can parse the difference.
Yeah,
there.
Exactly.
And so you've done residencies and that sort of thing?
So for us, the licensure is a little bit unique in terms of naturopathic medicine because it's state specific. It's not federal. Oh. So different states have different requirements. So in the state of California, we do not have to do a residency, but it has to be built into our medical program. So essentially our 4th year as medical students, we're acting as primary doctors underneath the supervision of attending physicians, treating patients, not independently though. So that really acts as our residency. So we get that patient interaction with that medical supervision from the attendings and learn a ton in terms of how to practice.
Interesting. So you probably have some insight on this then. Kirk Parsley is a medical doctor. He's been on the show twice now. He was on just 2 episodes ago, and he's he's taken the traditional route, but he's he's a very big proponent of what it sounds like what you do, in that he even said that your doctor, your general practitioner, your traditional doctor is really not a wellness doctor. He's a disease management specialist, not a wellness specialist.
Totally.
So you touched on it there with kind of not just treating the symptom, but treating the cause. And that's something I'm really interested in more and more. And I think that, my audience is mostly cops, and we don't like, as a general idea, we're not comfortable with the Band-Aid approach. And especially when it comes to pain management and opiates and stuff like that, those things typically scare my audience to death, right? I mean, we deal with the end result of the negative parts of that all the time.
Yeah, for good reason.
So we want to get healed in the most, I think, natural way possible. But how do you, see if I can phrase this question right, but what, how would you convince someone, as much as we want to be quote unquote natural, I think we're often a skeptical audience too, either by nature of our job or personality or whatever, that there's a natural way to do things. What are some of the things that you employ that if they're not narcotics based?
Sure. So it's for pain specifically?
Well, I guess for pain, but in general, I'll use myself an example. I've talked about it here before. So I have hypothyroidism, right? So I'm on levothyroxine, which is standard for hypothyroidism. Maybe or maybe not, there's a natural equivalent or a natural approach to that. But, those kinds of things, what are some of the examples of things that you would approach it differently than like a traditional doctor?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it really comes down to the understanding of how the body works and why the body's doing what it's doing. We're looking at it from a perspective of the body's not going to do anything randomly. There's a reason. It's really a well-oiled, scientific, amazing machine that knows so much more than we do. And it's really our role to support the body, figure out why the body's doing what it's doing, and then get it back to balance. So it's really what I'm doing is rooted in physiology, rooted in biochemistry, rooted in the understanding of why the body does what it does, and then reverse engineering it. So in the case of hypothyroid, like you mentioned, there's a reason why your body is down-regulating the thyroid gland. There are several different things it could be. It could be that your body is attacking your thyroid gland. Could be autoimmune thyroiditis. And that maybe is because you have, a sensitivity to gluten. It just so happens that the amino acid sequence for gluten and your thyroid tend to be pretty similar. So the body can really attack itself. There could be some other autoimmune process going on where you have an exposure to heavy metals. You have something in your digestive tract, an infection, if you will, something to down-regulate that metabolism in terms of the thyroid as a protective mechanism. So yes, we can supplement with thyroid hormone. We could do that indefinitely, and that would get you more or less symptom-free, but it's not really treating why the body's down-regulating the thyroid. And what we see a lot is the thyroid medication that you're on works for now, and then a few years go by, maybe you have to increase that dose, increase it a little bit because the body becomes less and less sensitive to it. So it's not necessarily a long-term perfect solution, but it works for now. So the way that I approach it, if at all possible, is why. That's really a question that I'm asking with every single patient is what's the why? Once we know the why, then we can really reverse engineer it, treat it, help it, get it better so that we're not dependent on the medication to solve it.
Interesting. Okay. So, I sometimes worry how I phrase questions because I want to be clear, but what are some of the things that either in your past experience in your practice or that you would expect to see maybe unique to shift work or to law enforcement people? I work 12-hour shifts, 4 days a week. We rotate every 4 months, so I'm on nights or days. I got a family, so I don't stay on if I'm on night shift, I don't stay as if I'm on nights on my days off. I turn back into a normal person and get up with the kids and do all that sort of stuff. And a lot of guys that reach out to me who listen to the show, we talk about their struggles and they've got that, they work out, they exercise, but they can't get rid of the midsection fat that I've come to learn is often related to some of the cortisol issues and all that. But what are the things you would be concerned about if this was our first, my first visit to your office, and I gave you that kind of set of problems. What sort of things would you start wanting me to be aware of?
For sure. I mean, a lot of it's going to come back to how can we support your body given the stress that you have to handle. There's no question that alternating sleeping at day, sleeping at night, back to day, I mean, that's going to be just essentially a lot of stress to the body. Your biorhythms are going to be off. So there are a lot of things we can do to support that. We can use targeted exposure to light. It's well understood that blue light is really, really stimulating to the brain, stimulating to the adrenals. So if you are having to work at night, getting some exposure to that blue light is going to signal your body, hey, we need to be up. It's daytime. Let's go. Conversely, when you're done with that shift and it's morning time and there's a lot of blue light out, we need you in a room that has blackout blinds and we need you to get some red light exposure. That red light is going to signal to your brain, okay, it's time to wind down, it's time to relax. So we're almost going to be manipulating light exposure to tell your brain that we need to shift your biorhythms to support your sleep because we need to get your sleep. So that's one way we definitely do it. Nutritionally is another huge way. Your body's going to be depleted of vitamins and minerals, no question, especially vitamin C. Vitamin C is super important in terms of supporting your adrenal gland, your gland that actually produces your stress hormone. So we'd want to get you on a lot of vitamin C. We'd want to get you on nutrients to help support your immune system because as your body has more and more stress, your immune system is going to take a little bit of a toll. So you're going to start to see more frequent colds and flus. You're going to start to see, hey, in the gym when I'm working out, maybe I'm not putting on as much muscle as I was before because my body just doesn't have that anabolic hormone response to match that training because my biorhythms are so off because of the alternating sleep-wake cycles. So a lot of finding out specifically what is your schedule, giving you a plan to say, hey, when you're working nights, this is what we're going to do in terms of light exposure, in terms of nutrition, in terms of supplements. And then we're going to also add in other things that you can do in your lifestyle to help modulate that stress. It's been shown that exposure to walking outside in the grass, getting that grounding, getting those negative ions from the earth, super calming to your nervous system. Walking on the beach, we're lucky. We're in Santa Barbara, California. We're right by the ocean. We can just go ahead and walk down to the beach and just get that exposure to the ions from the ocean. Again, super calming to the central nervous system. So the central nervous system is really what is the master of our hormones, the master of every function in our body. So being able to support that in terms of handling stress is really what we'd be looking at.
I'm about to head back to night shift soon, and blackout curtains are on order already, but and I don't know why it's taken me 10 years of law enforcement to finally just give up and get the blinds. We've tried the curtains and all that, but anyway, I've thought about and toyed with the idea of getting those orange glasses. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Are those something like worthwhile? For people who don't know, they're orange glasses that cut out that blue light. So in theory, if you get off shift and it's dark and you wear those until you get home when it's already light, that helps reduce some of that blue light. Are those things?
Totally. And funny you mentioned that. I was just at the Bulletproof conference in Pasadena here this weekend.
Oh, I'm jealous. I wanted to go.
Yeah, there were vendors there rocking those orange glasses, and seems like half the people there were rocking them, even daytime, because there were the really, really bright lights in the Pasadena Convention Center, and that's going to affect your body. So absolutely, those glasses can help a lot because, when you're getting off shift and it's morning time and you're going home and you're going to bed, you're getting that exposure to all that light. By the time you get home, your brain is primed to go. It's not primed to rest. So that would absolutely be something that would help because that'll really shield your eyes from that blue light. You'll be able to get home, get into that blackout room, use a little bit of that red light, calm that nervous system down, and get you to sleep much more easily.
Is that as simple as putting a red light bulb in the room?
It really can be.
Okay.
It can be. It can be a red light bulb. It can be a salt lamp. Salt lamps have those kind of yellowy, goldish hues. Again, really calming. So something that's just calming to the nervous system in the red light spectrum.
And on the blue light thing again, I'm now holding in my hand a device that, to my understanding, is horrible for blue light, right? My phone.
Yes, iPhone, any phone, really, absolutely.
And it's the screen and computer screens too, right?
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I know I've been told this before, but that idea of checking your phone while you're sitting in bed trying to crash out, probably not a good idea, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's super convenient. We all want to check in with technology, know what's going on with the fam, with the friends, with business. But yeah, that's about the worst thing you could do, because literally you're laying in bed there and you're getting that blue light exposure to your brain, and that's saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. And then you turn it off. You're like, oh man, I'm laying here. Why can't I fall asleep? So, it's really with shift workers, it's being conscious of your lifestyle, conscious of what you're doing, knowing that what you're doing is going to be stressful to your body. So really taking that into account and having a plan for what you're going to do to optimize your sleep, to optimize your biorhythms, to really help handle that stress. Okay. So yeah, little things like checking the phone, checking the computer, just not something that we can handle given the rest of the stress.
So you mentioned adrenals. Is adrenal fatigue a real thing?
Some will say yes, some will say no. Fatigue in that the glands just kind of, overwork, and then eventually they can't output and they shrivel up and they're gone. No, not to that extreme. But in terms of the amount of stress on those organs, I would say, and it's funny because those are the organs that help modulate stress, the functionality of it can go down. Mm-hmm. Fatigue is just a layman's term to talk about it. It makes kind of, some sense. What I see in clinically is that patients over time, when they are exposed to a lot of stress, chronic stress, whether it's from shift working, whether it's from being in traffic 4 hours a day, whether it's, only eating one meal a day because they're trying to lose weight, whether it's over exercising, whether it's an abusive relationship, really, it doesn't matter what the stress is. Our body cannot keep up a high stress hormone output over time. So we start to see things like pregnenolone steal, where our pregnenolone goes down. We start to see DHEA go down. Those are both precursors to actual cortisol themselves. And there are pretty much set phases of adrenal decline, adrenal fatigue, if you will, that people go through. And the end stage being flat out Addison's disease. That's where there is no hormone output there. And that can be a life-threatening situation. So conventionally, when they're looking at adrenal function, they're really considering the two polar opposites. Really, really high production being Cushing's disease. And again, there can be several reasons for that. And then really, really low production Addison's disease. So there's not much in terms of functionally looking at the adrenals, but that's where 99% of your people are going to be. They're going to be stressed out from whatever it is, even if it's a 9 to 5, high work expectations, again, poor diet, anything there. Over time, I think that goes down. So it's how do we support those people? It's going to have to be, lifestyle things, nutrition things, supplement things, because we really can't just give someone, hey, an adrenal supplement, and then you're good to go. Because over time, just kind of like we talked about with the thyroid, you're going to need more and more because the stress hasn't gone away. And I get a lot of times people say, oh, I have stress. There's nothing I can do about it. But really, it comes down to educating people on what those stressors are, because the more we realize what they are, the more we realize, oh, hey, I do have some control over that. You were talking about the iPhone. I would say the blue light exposure to your brain, that was a stressor for sure. Now, somebody didn't know that before. Oh, they know, hey, if I'm a shift worker, I can't be looking at my phone right before bed. Boom. That's one of the stressors we knock out to really decrease that overall stress load. And that's really a lot of what I'm doing with people with shift work, athletes. It's what stressors can we get under control and eliminate so that we can then better handle the stressors that we can't change, like the shift work, for example. So hormonally, in terms of what that looks like, we definitely see a decline over time in terms of the output, but more so than the fatigue of the gland, we see altered rhythms. So going back to what I said about biorhythms, there's a 24-hour cycle for cortisol where waking's supposed to be pretty high, morning's supposed to be the highest. That's where we're primed to work, primed to go. Afternoon a little lower, evening lowest, primed to go to bed. So when we're talking shift workers, since that's our primary population, that's what we're going to primarily see affected, because with staying up all night and working and then sleeping during the day, that normal cycle, that diurnal cycle of cortisol is going to be completely off. So that's what we're going to need to support more than anything to get these guys and gals sleeping at appropriate times so that the sleep they get is actually restorative, actually beneficial for them.
Is there a way to do that?
Yes. And I mean, what it takes, what I do in my practice is urine testing. Urine testing gives us a 24-hour cycle reading of what your hormones are like. So, someone who's not a shift worker, ideally, waking is going to be pretty high, morning highest. In a shift worker, if they're primarily doing the evening and sleeping the days, we're going to see that completely off. And for yourself, some days sleeping, some nights sleeping, it's not regular. So that's where it's working together to give you some of the education in terms of, all right, when you're having a work night, this is what your nutrition and supplement and lifestyle program needs to be. When your day, this is what it is. So it's going to be shifting. And there's always going to need to be some support there, because we're not going to be able to get you to a point where just diet alone is going to be able to handle the amount of stress for your body of working nights.
I've never thought of the idea of having a different set of nutrition principles for working days versus non-working days. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? I know we're in generalities and we have a lot of listeners, so it's hard to identify, we're not talking about one person necessarily, but
sure.
What are some of the main things that someone can do, to support themselves in that? Or what are the nutritional choices or supplemental choices that you mentioned? Vitamin C. Is there anything else you think that they should be doing either on those work days or on their off days?
Absolutely. So in terms of just supporting the adrenals in general, vitamin C, number one. B vitamins, B6, B12, big as well, definitely. Then we get into another category, which would be herbs. Herbs, some people, when I say that, they run away. They're like, oh, that sounds woo-woo. But really, herbs are what drugs are based on. So herbs, take ashwagandha. So it's a really known adaptogenic herb. Adaptogenic herbs are a category that really help modulate the stress your body's under. If you're under a lot of stress, it's going to help support you. If you don't have a lot of stress, it's going to support you. So we can't think of it like a drug in terms of a super, super defined action on the body. Herbs are more gentle than that. So ashwagandha is a great one where it just helps with resiliency, essentially. So that would be a great one. Another one, eleuthero. Eleuthero is a great one to help with the adrenals. Ginseng. There are a whole slew of herbs, and how herbs work is they have primary indications, secondary indications, tertiary indications. So ashwagandha, you could use it for adrenals, you could use it for immunity, you could use it for low libido. So it's not like a drug where there's one primary action for it. There are so many constituents in those herbs that they can help with a lot of different things. But so herbs would definitely be the next category that I'd add in on top of the vitamins. The third category there in terms of supporting the adrenals would be glandulars. And so glandulars are animal-derived hormone that are virtually identical to our own. A lot of times I use those in conjunction with herbs to help people support their adrenals. So for shift workers, I'd say all of those would help, but most likely we'd need to be dipping into that third category, the glandulars, because your own hormone output is going to be so, it's going to be altered. Specifically on those nights where you're having to stay up, we need to keep your body alert and going, and using those glandulars at targeted times to simulate as if it were daytime when your own natural hormone output is not going to be there, really, really help. Then conversely, daytime while you're sleeping, we're going to be using a whole different category of herbs to help calm down the natural hormone that's going to be telling you, oh, hey, it's 9 a.m. It's time to get going. Let's go. You're like, no, I need to sleep now. So as opposed to just kind of being at the mercy of what your natural hormone cycle is, even knowing that over time that's going to shift because of the shift work, we can use herbs and glandulars to support you and almost create a biorhythm that's going to match the lifestyle you have to have for your work, to keep you alert and actually get you sleeping during the day when otherwise it would be more challenging.
That's fascinating, and I've never heard. I've had a lot of doctors on the show, and we've never talked about the idea of supplementing to mimic that correct rhythm, or just like you're saying, like the glandulars to create in your body a dose that was as if your body was correctly dosing itself, outside of your standard prescription medication, I guess. But I guess in theory, you take that once a day, and it doses throughout the day as needed. But to pinpoint it down to certain times of the day. That's interesting. It makes sense that you would want to do something like that.
Exactly. And you know, it's funny you say that, like, it makes sense. Like it does. And it's because it's rooted in physiology. It's rooted in understanding your biorhythms and how they're naturally going to be. And so, hey, we need you to be awake at night. Let's simulate your biorhythms at night. Granted, it's not going to be perfect. We can never do the biorhythms like the body would naturally, but we can help. We can support it. So that's really what we're working on.
Sounds better than the caffeine inducement that I just typically that we all use.
For sure. I mean, you got to find a way to do it, right? Like shift worker, that's you just got to be alert. And so caffeine, that's a great topic that you bring up. A lot of people are just dosing up on the caffeine because it gets the job done. One thing in my office that's kind of a joke is when patients come in and they have adrenal issues, we got to get off the caffeine. And they're always like, oh, doc, really? Because for the short term, that's the only thing they've been able to use to keep going. What they're not thinking about is that it's really digging them deeper in the hole. So in terms of adrenal fatigue, like you mentioned, there is really sort of an output that your hormones can match. But think of coffee as like adding flame to the fire. It's like poking your gland, give me some more, give me some more. But over time, there's less and less and less to give. So caffeine really does kind of put us deeper in the hole, although in the short term, it helps a lot.
Well, I think we're done here. I mean, I'm not getting... That's just... I just had a cup of coffee before we started, and I love my coffee. Everybody loves... Well, not everybody, but we all love our coffee and enjoy it as a treat too. But no, I quit caffeine. I quit caffeine in general, actually, for like 6 weeks once. And that first week was miserable.
Yeah, totally.
Headaches and just crashing and all that. But I did actually end up feeling better and was able to manage just fine after, I don't know, about 10 days or so. And just, went back to it. But
yeah, no, that's totally common as well. It's like, and it's not that we can never have coffee. It's awesome. It tastes great, make a latte, delicious, but it's being smart about it. So really, when we're looking at how the body functions, it's knowing what the cause and effect are of everything that we do on our body. And with caffeine, it's, hey, I'm feeling a little tired. I'm going to have a cup of Joe. That's totally fine. But we need to know hormonally, is that something that's going to be okay? Can we handle that? Some people, when their hormones are just really not working, especially if we have added things on top, infections, decreased resiliency, like we need to know, hey, is this something that we can use right now or is it not? Because some people, they do great on caffeine and they're not addicted. 1 cup in the morning, maybe not every day, that's fine. It's really when you start to see, you wake up, oh, I need my coffee. I can't work without my coffee. That's when we're starting to see a warning sign of we have some deeper issues here that coffee's really exacerbating. So like you said, getting off of it can be hard. And then we get your body back to its normal rhythms, and all of a sudden you're feeling better than you did before. You're sleeping better. You have better energy in the later afternoons, because instead of sort of robbing from Paul given to Peter, if that's the correct saying, you're actually sustaining that energy. So it's just being smart. It's not that it's good or bad.
So the 3 venties I had on Sunday or on Wednesday to drag myself around is a red flag, you would say?
I'd say that's not something that we want to be doing every day, for sure. For sure.
Any difference with like the Monsters? A lot of guys who don't drink coffee, they drink the Monster drinks, and and there's sugar there too, of course.
We got quite a few things. In the Monsters, we got the sugars. We got some artificial sweeteners. We have some, I believe in that one, we even have some taurine, which is pretty interesting because taurine helps conjugate caffeine out of the body. So you're dosing caffeine with something that's going to get it out of your body. So I don't know if that's a marketing thing from Monster where they're like, hey, they're going to need more Monsters because we're going to get the caffeine and get the caffeine out. I
think it's sold as like an energy boost, right?
Isn't it? Yeah.
But it counteracts, okay.
Yeah, so taurine in there, I'm always like, just a little question mark on that one. I mean, I would say between Monster and caffeine, in terms of coffee, I'd say if you can get an organic coffee roast, that would be your better choice. Organic being the number one because coffee is one of the most heavily pesticided crops.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sorry to bring that bad news, but the Starbucks may not be doing everything you want it to. So again, it just goes back to being smart about what you're putting in your body and what it's doing to your body. So I definitely would say, organic coffee over the Monster for sure.
And then while we're on the caffeine drink topic, sugar. We mentioned sugar, and then you mentioned there's some fake sugar. Does your body know the difference?
Yes, it does. So, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to go for the artificial sweeteners because it's not going to spike my blood sugar, because we've all heard about diabetes. We know that's not good.
Right.
We know pretty much now it's common knowledge that sugar makes you fat. It's not fat that makes you fat. It's the sugars. So artificial sweeteners technically, theoretically would be great. Caveats though. So a lot of the artificial sweeteners actually are neurotoxins. Aspartame being one of the biggest ones. So really what happens is it's not going to spike our blood sugar, but it's going to do something different to our brains. It's actually going to make our body crave more sugar. So it's actually been shown in studies in terms of regular soda versus diet soda. Diet soda actually causes more weight gain over time because it's going to change how your body thinks about food. It's going to make you crave the sweets, crave the simple sugars versus, regular soda with the actual cane sugar. Sure, it's going to spike your blood sugar. It's not the best, but it's not going to affect your brain chemistry. So neither, I'd say, are awesome, but I would definitely stay away from the artificial sweeteners.
And that goes to all sorts of different things too. I mean, like protein powder is something that a lot of us, and anybody who's interested in their own fitness, we all drink a lot of protein powder, try and get our protein in, but there's all those fake sugars. What is there a fake sugar, quote unquote fake sugar that is safe, or what? I mean, I was going to point this out later, but you're in a Rogue t-shirt, right? So you're obviously part of, quote unquote, the community. And we'll get to that, but we're always trying to put good things in, but it's hard if you're in a hard WOD or you've done a hard workout for the day to get the protein you need. What would you recommend? Other than, obviously whole food is going to be probably your first answer, but if you can't get that in, what's the next best?
For sure. I mean, and myself, I'm a strength and conditioning athlete as well. I supplement. I use protein powders because post-workout, I really need to repair those amino acids, get that back up, help with that protein synthesis. So it all goes back to being smart in terms of reading the labels. So a lot of brands for protein powders, for pre-workouts, for post-workouts on the market, they're going to look good from a marketing standpoint. They're going to have, fit people on the label. They're going to tell you that this is the best thing since sliced bread. But really at the end of the day, what are the ingredients? So in terms of sugars, the more natural, the better. I mean, that's really what we're looking at. The body's designed to digest natural sugars, but it's really not designed to deal with the chemical ones. So stevia is something that is decent. Stevia is an herb. It's a plant. It's somewhere along the lines of like 1,000 times more sweet than sugar itself. So in terms of the amount that would be included in those protein powders, it's real small. You'll also see Reb A or things like monk fruit sometimes, but definitely stevia would be the most common. And that can give you that little sweetness that makes that protein powder palatable without adding in junk. So,
do you have a brand that you use?
So, as a healthcare practitioner, most of the brands that I use are professional. Okay. So it's not something that you could go to Whole Foods and buy. I mean, I'm using brands like Designs for Health, Integrative Therapeutics, really professional brands. And in terms of the supplement industry, again, long topic, lots to say there, but it's something that's not so well regulated. So there are pros and cons to that. The con being, as a consumer, it's really hard to know if what you're getting is healthy or if it's just good marketing that is making you want to buy it. Don't love to hate, but Progenics, it's big out there, especially in the CrossFit community. And from a doctor perspective, let's just say I don't recommend it. It's not the types of sweeteners that I really want my patients to be having. There's a lot of fructose in there, which someone could say, hey, that's natural. Sure, but fructose is not something that I really want to be dosing people up with, because in terms of the biochemistry of the body, fructose is not controlled. Our bodies can't sense the amount of fructose we take in like we can glucose, so it's really easy to overconsume the fructose, and it'll spike your blood sugar a lot. I mean, there's a lot that's come out, high fructose corn syrup, all that in the last 15 years or so. So we know to avoid that, but just seeing fructose on the label, people are like, oh, natural sugar. Not so much. So really stevia would be the primary one that I would say would be the best. And
if cane sugar is on a label, like I just bought a new, what I've been thinking is like the cleanest I could find. It's an isopure, but it's made with cane sugar. Mm-hmm. But on the label, what would be the label? Is it sucrose or glucose that people would hopefully look for or find if they're looking for an all-natural?
All-natural one. So, I mean, there are a lot of labeling tricks that can be done. So, I mean, essentially, cane sugar, there are multiple forms for that. If they're saying, sucrose, glucose, those are going to be broken down sugars. So they're going to be even more processed. So in terms of what sugars, what sweeteners are the best, the more natural, the less processed, the better. So, I mean, what I tell people generally is if we can get you on a protein powder that has stevia in it, great. If not, add a little natural sweetener to it yourself, because that's going to be a lot better than any of the processed sugars that we see on labels, whether it be fructose, glucose, sucrose, any of those ones that are broken down. And
if someone wants to get some of the the professional grade stuff, it takes a prescription?
Yes, it does. Yeah, so it has to be via a healthcare provider. So for all my patients in my office, I offer them getting their prescription supplements through me. That way I can ensure that what they're getting is quality. It actually is in the right form that they need, and it's products that I've used with my patients in the past, so I know they work. I get a lot of times patients coming in on, fish oil from Costco and, vitamin E from Trader Joe's or something. They're like, yeah, it's cheap, I'm just going to do that. It's like, okay, so let's have a little conversation about the quality. Is it actually doing what you need it to do in your body, or does it just price compare pretty well? So in terms of supplements, that's a big thing. What, when, how, there's a lot that goes into it, but cheap is definitely not better when it comes to the supplement industry, because, I can speak specifically to fish oil. There are two primary forms that fish oil can be in, the triglyceride form or the ethyl ester form. 90% of the fish oils on the market out there are going to be in the ethyl ester form because it's cheaper to manufacture. So that fish oil that's $10 less on the shelf is probably in the ethyl ester form, which is an issue because that oxidizes way faster. So, you hear a lot of people, I don't take fish oils because I get fish burps. Well, most likely the fish oil that they're taking is in the ethyl ester form. It's already oxidized by the time it's on the shelf. So by the time they ingest it, that oil's rancid. Their body's going to burp that up because the body's saying, hey, we don't want this oil. Let's get it out of the system. So all of a sudden fish oil gets a bad rep. So it's really knowing, is that fish oil in the triglyceride form, which is going to be shelf stable much longer. Triglycerides are fats our body recognizes. It's natural to our body, versus that ethyl ester form. Just as an example to say, there's so much that goes into what type of supplement and the form of it.
Is there a way to tell on the shelf which one it is?
I mean, it's really understanding the labels. And sometimes, they're not even going to say what form it is. I mean, things like magnesium, you can have a bunch of different types of magnesium, bunch of different types of zinc. So it's really knowing what is the best type given what you have going on. And that's where really as a primarily natural health practitioner, I'm really able to help people understand this is what you need given what you have going on. A lot of people just want to spend money and just, drive to Sprouts, drive to Whole Foods, load up on, I hear probiotics good, I hear fish oil's good, all this stuff. It's like, do you need that? And is that in the right form, the right quantity for you?
Yeah.
So I'd much rather be working with people, having them spend their money on what we know they need versus just buying the kitchen sink because it's quote unquote good for you.
And what I'm just thinking about like my own situation, and I think I'm a classic case, I guess, is what I'm looking for in terms of some of the issues that are going on. So had blood work done not long ago, and I'm not going to remember all the numbers, but the one that sticks out right now that I didn't think was a big deal at the time because my general practitioner kind of brushed it off. And I'll actually talk about that whole experience. I had a physical recently after my birthday and went through the blood work and, like I said, the hypothyroid. So we checked that. I asked for a pretty in-depth cardio lipid panel after having a cardiologist on the show out of Austin. He's a cardiologist and he's a cop. So he's like a heart surgeon and a U.S. Marshal. He's a crazy guy. He told me to go get these, this kind of bigger, deeper cholesterol test about size and stickiness and all that sort of stuff. And so anyway, everything came back pretty decent. But the one thing that came back a little high was my fasting blood glucose, which was 100. And my doctor didn't seem terribly concerned by it. But when, again, we had Kirk Parsley on just a couple episodes ago, he was saying that's concerning to him for someone of who, not specifically me, but he said anything over 95 for someone who's relatively active and young and doesn't have any other issues, he would be concerned with that. And then this is where my issue with, I guess, the healthcare industry in general is. My doctor is, goes through things like, hey, everything looks good. We don't need to change your medication. We don't need to do any of those other things, and everything looks fine. And I was like, and I don't remember what I said. I was like, well, I probably need to lose weight, right? He's like, oh, well, yeah, you need to lose like 40 pounds, but I mean, everything else looks fine. So it was kind of funny because I guess he took it as, this is my fault, right? In some sense that he was saying it as if, I already knew the answer, so it wasn't worth him repeating it to me. He wasn't doing the whole come to Jesus talk of you need to lose weight. Maybe he just given up on that. Maybe it's just not successful with most people. Maybe he just felt like I wasn't prepared to hear it, or maybe just that I knew it. But it goes back to that kind of backseat role that I think traditional medicine plays in the disease management, not the wellness, not the tip of the spear in terms of your wellness.
Totally.
So what made you want to take that path and try and do this route?
So let me just first get back to what you said in terms of disease management. Like somebody coming into my office, we're going over their full blood panel, everything. We're running quite a bit, but we're talking about anything that is functionally not where we'd want it to be. We're talking about it. We're talking about the whys. We're getting them on a plan to fix that. So in terms of the reference ranges, you mentioned, the other doc saying anything above 95. Absolutely. I mean, the quote unquote normal reference range for fasting blood sugars is 70 to 100. So at 100, you're the upper end of normal. So conventionally, that's fine. I'm looking at that. I'm like, okay, that's already a red flag that there's something off because we're not optimal. I'm looking at blood chemistry, a subset of the range, and looking at what is optimal. And with that blood sugar as well, several other markers that are telling me what else is going on. I'd be looking at what's called your hemoglobin A1C, your glycosylated hemoglobin. That's a more or less 3-month marker of your blood sugar control. We're still seeing issues there. We're going to even go deeper, fructosamine, glycomark. There are other things that we can look at to see your blood sugar control. Is it affected by your nutrient status? Is it your stress hormones that are affecting your blood sugars? There's blood chemistry there's so much more to it than are you within the normal range. Getting back to, I guess, your question, why I got into this. This is personal for me. It's real personal. So, you can tell a smile on my face. This is what I'm about. This is my passion in life, is educating people on how to feel better and be healthier in their body and their lives because they're not getting it. Because general practitioners are looking at the blood chemistry, and even though there are signs of things not being right, they're saying, oh, you're fine. Your medications, we don't need to change that. And that's not going to get people well. That's not going to help them feel better. It's not going to help them perform better. It's just telling them you don't have a disease yet that we need to manage with drugs. And that's not medicine. That's disease management for sure. So myself, I had, some digestive issues as a kid, was in a pretty bad car accident as a 9-year-old kid. And I had chronic pain. So I know what it's like to be told, all right, well, we can give you a prescription for opiates, all this type of thing. It's like, as a kid, I was like, this just didn't make sense to me. And, I came from a family that was, naturally inclined in terms of diet and stuff. Granted, I was a vegetarian as a kid because in the 80s, we thought that was good. Not so much anymore.
My wife as well.
Yeah. We, family tried to do what we thought was healthy. And I just kind of knew pain medications, that wasn't an answer. So thankfully, was under a lot of chiropractic care. Eventually had a, chiropractor that would come to my house because I couldn't walk for a few months. It was pretty bad.
Really?
But wow. I was left with some pretty chronic pain. that was exacerbated when I would sit a lot, stand a lot. So I was sitting in school, I was always fidgeting and stuff, but I'd always been an athlete. So I was like, hey, this isn't going to stop me. And I felt better when I was moving. So, fast forward a few years and I still had pain, and I think it was my last year of high school. I just would fall asleep with ice packs on my back. I was like, I'm not taking pain medications. That just doesn't work for me. And I actually found a naturopathic doctor via my mom, who was diagnosed with leukemia. She worked with a naturopathic doctor and said, hey, you need to go see her. So first thing she did some blood work, and she's like, I see pretty high signs of inflammation. And she did some dietary changes with me, got me off of gluten and dairy. That was it. And my pain went down 50%.
Wow.
So, and this was, revolutionary to me because I thought I'd been kind of healthy, but I was your typical, I loved my bagels, I loved my yogurts, I didn't eat much sweets and cereals and stuff, but I liked my grains and my dairies. So I was a little resentful at first. Why do I have to do this? This isn't fair, yada, yada. But once I started to realize that my pain went down, I was like, whoa, all right, no, this is something that's big. Still at that time though, didn't really know what route to go. I was really into international affairs, wanted to be a lawyer. But after my third year of undergrad, I was just like, all right, what makes me tick? What if I were to get up every day would make me excited? And I mean, just talking to you right now, it makes me so happy because I know that there are going to be people listening that are going to be affected by this. And if I can offer them something that helps improve the quality of their life, that's really what I'm about. So I decided to go to naturopathic medical school, which meant I had to do an extra 2 years of pre-med. Got in, was roughest 4 years I think of my life. People think natural medicine is easier. Oh, let me tell you, no, because we got to train in pharmacology. We have to know everything about drugs, everything about pathology, and then we have so many therapeutics on top. So my licensing exams they're rough, but thank goodness I passed those, and then now have my practice, and I get the people that come to my office that say, hey, I don't feel well, but I've been told everything's fine. I'm like, well, let me assure you everything's not fine because the body doesn't do anything randomly. Mm-hmm. If you're fatigued, if you're achy, if you have digestive issues, if you have blood sugar issues, like let's look at physiology. Let's look at biochemistry. Let's break down how the body works and figure out what's going on. And it's fun. I mean, it's like kind of being a medical detective because I'm not just saying, okay, your lab references is here, therefore we do this. There's no algorithms when it comes to holistic medicine. It's what do you need for your body? It's not this drug is first line, this drug second line, third line. So it's fun.
That's cool. That's awesome. What is what's a typical patient for you? Is it someone who is younger and is more interested and who's done some reading and done some exploration of that, or is it I don't know. Do you have a typical patient? Not really. I guess there are kind of categories of typical. I definitely get your, late 50s, mid 60s that are, coming in. Hey, I'm thinking about retirement. I want to focus on my health. So they don't necessarily have any disease processes, but they know they have cardiovascular disease that ran in the family. They have cancer. They're like, all right, I want to get on the healthy bandwagon now. That's a crowd. Real common is your early 30s, 40s that are starting to have some issues, whether it's thyroid, whether it's diabetes, whether it's autoimmune disease, and they're just not getting the answers that they want elsewhere, or they already knew that they want to do the natural approach. And even in the natural approach, though, it's not like they're oppositional. It's not like we're going to do everything natural always. I really want to empower people to make choices. I want to give them options. I'm trained in conventional medicine. I'm trained in pharmaceuticals. If we need some, beta blockers for a heart condition, all right, and that's their choice, and I educate them on the options, that's okay. In terms of, autoimmune disease, if we need some steroids, we need to get that inflammation down for a while, then let's do it. It's not about my personal philosophy and telling them what I think they should do. It's about me educating them and what do they want to do in their lives. Most people I'd say that are coming to me already know that I have a more natural training, so I'm going to be able to present them those options. So rarely do I get someone that just wants your conventional approach, because there are a whole slew of doctors they could go to for that. But it is really nice to be able to speak both languages, to understand when patients come in on medications, to be able to
to know how that's going to affect their bodies. What do we need to add in on top? Something super common is statin drugs, for example, very, very common to manage cholesterol. I don't use them in my practice very often at all. But there are a lot of things naturally we can do to support the body if they need to be on that medication. And again, it comes down to patient choice. So I'll be educating them of the pros and the cons. And then they make the decision because it's their life and their body. But that's really, I see it as my role to educate people, not tell them what they have to do.
So in that vein of educating, not telling, this is one of my favorite questions to ask people is, everybody these days is time crunched. But when you work a 12-hour shift and you've got to try and sleep a good 6 to 8 hours and you've got family and whatever, obviously priorities have to take, priority. So the question I sometimes ask is, if someone's got an hour a day to focus on their health, and that means everything, that means they could spend that hour working out, their mobility, their meal prep, or their nutrition planning, or their, anything that is encompassed in that, and they have an hour to spend, how would you have them divide up that hour?
It's a really hard general question to say because there's so many factors that go into that. Say that person is a young guy, doesn't have a family, has a meal prep service, and, his hormones are pretty good. The only stress he has is work. Then he can probably handle that hour of exercise because that added stress is something he's going to adapt to. It's actually going to be beneficial. You give me, a 50-year-old woman who is the sole mother for 2 kids and, financial stress, a lot going on. Is she going to be able to go to the gym during that time and actually get benefit from that, given that she has so many other stressors on her plate? Probably not. So it really comes down to what is going to be best. What can you handle? Because there's no question that exercise would be top. But can you handle that stress? Does it need to be, a CrossFit WOD, or can it be, a walk with, a brisk walk or something? So priorities, it's so individualized, and that's really where I get hung up sometimes answering people's generic questions is that what I tell people I do is personalized natural medicine, and that personalization is really what makes it effective. So, I could say things that would be important to think about: exercise, definitely food prep, stress management in terms of calming down that nervous system. We talked about, taking 15 minutes, walking on the beach, deep breathing, just allowing your body to de-stress, deload, because especially as a service person, whether it's first responder, police, whatever, like you're on alert a lot of the time. Like your nervous system is very, very active. We really need to have activities that balance that calm you down, that allow your body to get into what's called parasympathetic mode. That's one of the 2 modes of your central nervous system. And that's the state where your body can digest, can repair, can basically support the function of your body. If you're constantly alert, go, stressors coming at you, we're going to start to see digestive issues. We're going to see issues putting on muscle. We're going to see lower immunity. We're going to see frequent colds, flus, fatigue. So long answer, but it's so personalized.
So I'll follow up on a question like that. Are you familiar with James FitzGerald from OPEX?
Yes, I am.
Are you an OPEX coach?
No, my fiance is. And actually, Michael Ban, shout out to him. He's my coach from OPEX.
Okay, so you're very familiar.
I'm very familiar.
So he was on a couple episodes ago as well, and he brought up something that I'd never heard before. And, CrossFit has got a real foothold in law enforcement and in first responders, right? I mean, there's a lot of agencies that have adopted it, a lot of CrossFit. There's a lot of agencies that have a CrossFit box in the agency, right? And it's really taken on a real passion for law enforcement. And I think it's because we see the benefits of it directly, and we see that. But we also often use it as a stress inoculation. And that mental aspect of CrossFit, I think, is what appeals to a lot of us. It certainly does to me, one aspect of it. But James was on and provided a different view that if you're in a stressful job and you've had a stressful day, the last thing you should be doing is a stressful workout.
Completely agree.
You agree? Okay.
I completely agree.
It's something that hadn't occurred to me before. And his rationale for it was legitimate. I mean, it made sense. Of course it's legitimate, but I mean, it made sense to me. But what is it something that all of our workouts shouldn't be stressful, or just should we be aware of what kind of day we've had or plan to have, and we need to adapt accordingly?
I definitely say it's the latter. I mean, because think about it, and I mean, it goes back to resiliency. How resilient are you, and how much stress can you handle? Mm-hmm. What stress is too much to tip you over to the point that it's no longer a benefit? It's actually going to be detrimental. So exercise can be either. It can be a benefit or it can be detrimental depending on what type it is and how much you can handle. So, I mean, definitely taking into account what type of day you've had. I mean, if you've had a day where you were out, you were on the field, and you had a lot going on, your central nervous system's not going to be able to handle a high intensity workout. I mean, you're not going to be able to handle Fran. You're not going to be able to do Diane. You're not going to be able to do something super fast. I mean, it's gonna tear you down. Kind of like the coffee analogy we were talking about earlier. It's gonna dig you deeper into the hole. Those would be days where, some controlled, some strength sets, just some pure strength work. Just put some muscle on there. Nothing too complex. No, drop snatches, squat snatches, nothing that's really taxing to the body, but some deadlifts, some bench, a little bit of aerodyne, nothing super hard, maybe some sets at 80%, something where you're moving, you're getting blood flow, but it's not going to leave you on the ground. And I know that, I mean, myself, I got to OPEX and it was a journey to get there, but I used to be the type of athlete that it wasn't a workout if I wasn't on the ground, dying with breath. I didn't push hard enough. Mm-hmm. That concept that we have to push to be good enough all the time, frankly, it's just not true. So it's, and it'll burn us out over time. So when you already have a big stress, like being a shift worker, you got to think about how much can you handle. So, I mean, James, I think he's a brilliant guy. And in terms of training, strength and conditioning, he's definitely someone that I look to in terms of what I understand from that world. And I think he's spot on. So, kind of what we talked about earlier in terms of let's change your protocol, let's change your lifestyle based on what you have going on for the day. If you're working nights, sleeping days, the next day you're switching it, your exercise in those 2 days is going to be different. Because when you're working at night and your only time to exercise is right after that or right before that, that's not going to be a great time for you to respond to that exercise. Versus, the week after, you're sleeping nights, and you're working day, and before you go in for your shift, you can get to the gym. It's, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., your hormones pretty good. That's a good day to get that intense workout in. So definitely periodizing and switching that up is what you'll want to do.
Interesting. I think me especially, but a lot of people too, we use those hard workouts just as for the cathartic release of it too. But we have to kind of rein ourselves in, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, and you'll see that a lot with endurance athletes too, like that runner's high. It's just like there's a fine line between using exercise as a stress reliever and actually exercise being a stressor. So, and I think the latter, exercise being a stressor, is not something that people really think about much. They think, I got to exercise, it's good for me, let's go do it. But people that are exercising a lot, there is too much, there is too intense, there is that you're not going to respond to that. And I see a lot of those clients in my office, whether
right.
they be local or distance. I do telemedicine, and I get a lot of athletes that are I've been training, whether it's CrossFit, whether, whatever sport it is, hard for 5-10 years. All of a sudden back pain's flaring up. All of a sudden, I feel kind of flatlined, and I'm just blah, maybe my libido's a little down. I'm feeling a little depression. What's going on? This is just uncharted territory. Mm-hmm. I took a week off and it's still there. It's this didn't happen in the last month. This is buildup of what's been going on in your body for the last, 5-10 years. And it's been burning the candle at both ends. And now we're starting to see the body just can't keep up anymore. So that's where we get on a targeted protocol in terms of working with hormones, working with digestion, working with sleep, to rebuild the body. But ideally, if we can educate people to not get there, that would be better. I know it's hard though. Myself, I overtrained myself. I got into CrossFit, and about 2 years in, I was competing. I was still in medical school. I was really working it hard. Some people told me, hey, maybe you want to dial back a bit. I'm like, no, I feel great. This is awesome. The strongest I've ever been. This is good, but it just wasn't sustainable. And I burnt out. And thankfully I had people around me that knew what was going on. I got the appropriate treatment, but if I could have saved myself, a couple years of hormone mess up, altered training, definitely some mood swings and stuff going on that, now I know, okay, these are the warning signs. This is how we support it. This is how we make exercise something positive for the long term in your life versus like, oh, I just need to push it today.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been taught too that you exercise to relieve stress. So it really truly was the first time that I ever thought about when James said that you're just inducing more stress into your system.
Totally.
So it's a totally new mindset for me. It was something that I actually thought of the other day when I created a workout that turned out to be way too hard for what I was trying to do that day, but I stuck with it. But by 1 o'clock in the afternoon was almost asleep, was struggling to fall asleep. And I was thinking to myself, I think this is what he meant.
Totally. I mean, and then that's where OPEX is big too, on knowing why you train. Like, are you training for performance or are you training for health? Mm-hmm. Because they get a lot of crowd that's training for performance. They have some games level athletes and stuff, and that's awesome. But what are your priorities? Mm-hmm. And if you're a shift worker, if you're a first responder, police, like, is that something that you can really dedicate a lot of your energy to? Can you handle that? Like, that's really what you have to ask yourself. And I know in my professional life versus my life as an athlete, like, there have been times where I've had to shift my priorities. Like, when I say right now, in terms of what books am I into, I'm into finance books. I'm building a business. Like, my training is definitely dialed back, because I know if I pushed it for 6 days a week and I did intensity, I'd crash. My body would start to hurt. I would just have, my mood would be off. Like, I couldn't handle that. And so, my goal is I'm going to be doing strength and conditioning until I'm 85, till I'm 90. Like, I'm going to be that grandma that can deadlift more than some people. Like, I'm not willing to accept that once you're 50, you're old. Like, that's just not my paradigm. So I want to make sure that my body can handle that for the long term. So if that means, hey, I'm not going to be doing, a WOD 5 days a week, then I'm cool with that. But it's knowing when you can handle it. When I purposefully take some more time and prioritize my training a little bit more, then I can rev the intensity up. But it needs to be smart.
So I think the challenge for a lot of us in this, there's a phrase out there called, a tactical athlete. Mm-hmm. Some people call it like a warrior athlete, but I like tactical athlete because the idea being is that I need to treat myself as an athlete, right? It's usually a boxing analogy that comes up, but like a boxer, I could end up in a fight for my life, right?
Totally.
But I don't know when that fight's going to be. I don't know who it's against. I don't know the size of my opponent. And I don't know what skills or tools I'll have with me when that fight occurs. So I need to be, in some sense, treat myself as an athlete for that event. Or I could be called upon to, extricate people from a situation, and all of a sudden I'm fireman carrying a grown adult. And that could happen in the next minute, right? Mm-hmm. I had an incident this weekend that was at work and it's wasn't a physical exertion, more of a mental one, but it was just an example of the job that I was chatting with my wife on the phone while I'm driving around, and I hang up with her, and a call comes out, and I'm 1 block away, and within 20 seconds of talking to my wife and just being like, hey, what's up, how's the day, how are the kids, blah, 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 and I'm in some guy's room trying to make sure that he doesn't die. Like 20 seconds, right? Like, boom, all of a sudden. So I use that as an example of, we have to treat ourselves as athletes. So how do you balance being ready for something, as severe as, a fight for your life that a lot of our listeners have been in, with a parolee who doesn't want to go back to prison, or helping rescue people from a fire or car accident, something like that, and being ready for that versus knowing or just being able to back off. I mean, that's so hard for us because when you're backing off, you feel like you're not preparing yourself for that potential inevitability.
No, totally. I get it. And I get the athlete analogy because, that's a documentary that came out, The Road to the 2015 CrossFit Games. It was behind the scenes of what those athletes were doing to take care of themselves while going through the CrossFit Games. And you got to see, there was a lot of behind the scenes. So for you guys treating yourselves as athletes, I totally get it. And what that means is your body needs to be a well-oiled machine. Like, your time off work isn't really off, because it's your time to take care of your body so you can perform at that level. So it's a challenge. Like, that's really hard, and kudos to you guys, because there's no time where you can just literally just, completely be scot-free. It's, when you're not on, when you're not on call, like, and something could come up in 5-10 seconds, whenever it is, like, you got to relax, and you have to build that body. You have to de-stress that nervous system. So it is a really fine line of knowing what stressors you can handle and how to rebuild your body. But that's really, the number one thing I would say would be, get on a protocol that is going to be tailored for you, that's going to teach you exactly what you need to do to keep your body a well-oiled machine, because that constant potential of having to just go into a life-threatening situation is exhausting, and that'll just burn you out. So, recovery protocols in terms of nutrition, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of hydration, in terms of emotional, like, there's so many things that you can do to take care of yourself. But really taking care of yourself and keeping that body as a well-oiled machine is going to keep you sustainable and keep you able to perform at that level and handling that amount of stress for the long haul. So, and exactly what that looks like is going to depend on what other stressors you have in your life outside of that work. Again, kind of going back to that single mom versus that, 20-something dude, like, completely different scenarios. And health history, family health history, personal health history, there's a lot that goes into it. Yourself dealing with, a hypothyroid situation, that definitely changes, how you could take care of yourself. But to give listeners some things to do, it's definitely training. You guys got to stay strong. There's no question. But you have to stay mentally alert, and you have to repair. So probably the biggest thing I would say, since most listeners are into the CrossFit world, they can push themselves, they can train. What they're probably not doing is the recovery. Is the recovery not only from the workouts, but from shifts, from being on. Like, when your central nervous system has to be so hyper alert to respond to something at any time, it also needs downtime. And that downtime needs to look, it's not like sitting down in front of the TV, oh, this is relaxing, because you got to think about how the brain and the body is physiologically responding to that situation. So it's walks on the beach where you're taking deep breaths, and that literally is calming your central nervous system. It's hanging out with the kids and just having that family bonding time where you're just feeling happy and feeling good. It's whatever you do in your life that's just like, your body is just at ease and relaxed. Like, your breath is slower, and that's going to be different. Myself, I love the beach. That's where I go back to it. I also just love listening to some Avicii, some kind of electronica stuff. That just it gets me so happy and so calm and just jazzed on life. That works for me. I know other people that, the things that they like to do, they like to garden. They like to go for hikes, just doing something. And it doesn't have to even be an activity that's a long time. There definitely are shortcuts. Guided meditations are something that I incorporate a lot for myself. But for you guys, that would be awesome, because literally what you're doing is you're taking anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes where you're focusing on that meditation. Mm-hmm. It's usually guiding you through some sort of breath focus, visualization, something. But the goal is literally to get that nervous system in that parasympathetic state, because it's kind of like you're charging a battery. Like, when you have to be on hyper alert all the time, that's draining your battery hardcore. The time when you're not on needs to build that battery up. So intense exercise definitely can build that battery in terms of your strength and your cardiovascular capacity, so long as you can respond to it. So I think there are a lot of people that definitely push it too hard.
Yeah, I'm learning that.
And I had to learn that too, and the school of hard knocks, because so many things in our society support more is better and pushing hard. Don't
everything.
Be, don't be fat. Don't be lazy. Exercise. Push.
I have a hard time just on if I'm just using an elliptical for the day or something like that, staying in that low fat loss heart rate zone. I want to be maxed out.
Yeah, we
do.
And that's our culture of kind of instant gratification. More is better. Push, push, push. And a lot of times I'm working with people, showing them based on their lab work, based on their blood work, based on their hormones, hey, this is what you can handle right now. Mm-hmm. Our goal would be, do we want to get you to a point where you can handle intense workouts for 4 times a week? Absolutely. Do we want to get you back to PRing on your lifts? Yes. Do we want to get your pain down? Do we want to get your mood up? Those are all things we want to do, but it's a process, and the body needs time and support to get there. So it's challenging, and it's, you can't just go on the internet and Google nutrition, Google, oh, hey, give me an exercise program. This is going to work, and that's where OPEX really has it right, because they're all about individualizing the exercise protocol. They're off-site coaching. Mm-hmm. That's what they do. A coach works with you, takes into account your stressors, they're talking nutrition, and gives you something where it works for you. It's going to build you up. So you don't have to, as a person, know, all right, if I do Fran today, am I going to be gassed tomorrow? And am I, is that going to take me down? So it's hard to know when you're in yourself. I mean, you got to be pretty in tune or have the right team to know what's best.
What are some of the things a regular person, but just a person can do after a workout to help their body recover? And I know we talked like a little bit about like some of the professional proteins, but you mentioned getting amino acids back in, but like what are some general things to help with like muscle soreness and muscle fatigue and getting that repaired back up so that you don't go into a deficit on a general workout? Like, what are the things we should be doing right after a workout to help ourselves? For
sure. I mean, the first one is going to be keep moving. So often in the CrossFit world, it's I finish the WOD, timer ends, beep, and you're on the floor. Keeping the body moving to keep the blood flowing, that would definitely be number one. Foam rolling would be great as well, because when we exercise, we're going to have micro tears in our muscles, micro breakdown. That's what's supposed to happen. Then we're supposed to build from that. So we're going to have liquid that's going to pool around our muscles from that breakdown. And we need to keep it moving. How do we keep it moving? It's our lymph system. That's basically all of the metabolic drainage from our body is moved via the lymph system. And that is literally pumped by skeletal muscle. So if you're just lying there 5-10 minutes, your body's not actually circulating that lymph fluid. So walking, maybe easy airdyne, foam rolling. Those are the great things. And then second day after, again, keep moving. Post-workout soreness, delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, that happens, that's exacerbated by lack of movement. So that would definitely be number one. Above and beyond that, there are a lot of things you can do with contrast hydrotherapy, alternating hot application with cold application. That pumps your circulation. That can definitely help. Some e-stim. E-stim is great. Again, it's getting that muscle contraction. Mark Pro is a brand that's just, big in that. It doesn't have to be a Mark Pro. It can be any e-stim, but just getting that muscle twitch helps. And then, it's going to be diet and it's going to be supplementation as well. Like we mentioned, getting the protein in there, definitely getting food back in, depending on what your workout was. If it was some heavy lifting with some high intensity, then definitely replenishing your glycogen stores, getting enough carbs in your body to really help respond to that exercise is going to be key. There's a lot of people that want to exercise also for the weight loss, and they're just doing, chicken and salad. Well, you got to think again, like what are you trying to recover from, and is that going to help you recover, or do you definitely need some more carbs in there to recover? So I'd say in the weight loss crowd, definitely would be adding in some more healthy carbs, starchy vegetables, sweet potatoes, rice, that type of thing. And then we're looking at, going back to that stress resiliency thing in terms of how is your body hormonally going to recover from that exercise. So if it was super intense and you already had a busy day, adding in some sort of restorative thing to help you recover from that exercise is going to be awesome. Whether it's, a 10-minute walk outside, walk on the beach, something where you're getting into that calm, relaxed state. That's not only going to help you handle the stress from your day, but it'll also help you respond better to your exercise. Because really the only reason to exercise is to respond from it. But if your stress hormone's already maxed out, if your testosterone's low, essentially if your hormones are not there, we need to do some things lifestyle wise to help support those hormones to help you then respond better to your training.
What about nootropics? I've been exploring those a little bit, and before anybody calls my internal affairs department, I'll explain what nootropics are, or maybe you can do it better than I can. But like I use Alpha Brain every once in a while from on it, but I've noticed that there are a couple of different. I'm not sure if I guess they're not herbs, but minerals. Some are herb combinations that really help with mental acuity, and maybe it's just a placebo thing. But I started using them after a friend of mine who's been on the show recommended them, and he swore by them. And I tried it, and I felt like I was a little clearer headed, a little more focused. And then in other ways, there was other ones, and I'm drawing a blank now, of course, in front of me on what it was, but taking it and it's calming. Selenium. Is that right?
Selenium's a mineral.
It's not selenium then, but there's one called Zen, but it's a mixture of stuff, including magnesium. I know, but anyway, explain what nootropics are, and then give me your opinion on them.
So, I mean, my understanding of that would just kind of go back to, what I'm more familiar with would be neurotransmitters. Okay. So, how the brain functions, the signals of the brain to put you in different states. Big ones that I'm looking at are dopamine, serotonin, GABA.
That's one. Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
Of them, yeah.
So it's how to explain them. They're kind of like your brain hormones, if you will. Like they're the substances that are secreted that make you feel the way you do, that really govern how your body functions. So, I'm trying to think of how to explain them. So, because
to me, it's kind of like a supplement for your brain.
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, and I wish I could. But okay, GABA is one. GABA, and another one called that commercially is called Zen, but it's a mixture of stuff. And I think GABA is one of those things. But if I've noticed, especially with those, when taking that, there is a very calming effect.
Totally.
And like a marked difference, which was cool. And then there's the other ones, like Alpha Brain promotes, mental acuity and clarity. So as much as like I might take protein to build muscle or amino acids to help with soreness after a workout, it seems like taking the nootropics is a brain supplement.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not as familiar with nootropics in terms of post exercise. More so in terms
not necessarily post exercise, but like on a day to day. Like I
yeah.
take some of the relaxing ones like towards the evening, or if I've noticed it'll counteract a lot of caffeine.
Yeah.
If I've had a high dose of caffeine that morning, I just was enjoying my coffee and ended up drinking too much, and now I'm jittery and shaky.
Yeah.
I'll take some of that, and it'll definitely negate some of that caffeinated effects.
Yeah, there are a lot of supplements that can be used to alter the state you're in, and that sounds kind of like psychotropic.
Well, there are a lot of those.
No, but just like and that kind of would go back to what we were talking about in terms of some days you're working nights, some days you're working days. So the times that you're working nights, we need to boost your hormone output to keep you acute for the day. While you're working, while you're sleeping during the day, then we're going to need to calm that nervous system down. So we're going to be using things like GABA. We're going to be using things like there's a great product by Integrative Therapeutics called Cortisol Manager. It's using herbs and also neurotransmitters in a way to calm your nervous system. So we can calm your nervous system. We can spike your nervous system. It's using herbs and vitamins to really alter your biorhythms, I guess is kind of what I would use it. So, if say, you're not a shift worker and you're just having trouble sleeping at night, there are a lot of things that we can use to help support that. In the short term, can we get you some melatonin with some magnesium, with some GABA, maybe some tryptophan? Yeah. All of those are going to help in terms of calming you down. We can also, hit your nervous system from a different perspective. We can get some essential oils, some lavender, some, just things that are going to calm you down. There's so many things that affect our bodies out there. It's just what do you need? So that's where it goes back to being smart. And even if, you're chronically having troubles with sleep, well, why is that? Is it best to give you a sleep aid, whether it's a natural or a pharmaceutical, or is it some sort of blood sugar issue where your body's keeping you up? Is it, too much stimulation from going back to that iPhone? You're just checking that out right before bed. So I'm hesitant to just say, hey, we always need to supplement with this. More so, what's going on, and can that supplement get us where we want to be with our health versus having it be a crutch? So in that post exercise, which is I know where you're going with in terms of bringing up those nootropics, they can help. There's no question. Totally help. But do we need them? Depending on what we have going on, is that our long-term solution? Is there something more natural we can do? Because a lot of times there's lifestyle things we can do to change. Not having that caffeine after 2 p.m. or not being on that iPhone at night, or dimming the bright lights in the kitchen before you're getting to bed. Mm-hmm. All simple things that'll save you from having to be on a supplement.
Alcohol.
Sometimes people are resorting to that. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I know it kind of just goes back to what you need. But yeah, the neurotropics, the neurotransmitters and stuff, there's no question that they can help.
Yeah. Dr. Ace, thanks for being on the show. Are you on Twitter, Instagram?
I am on both. On Facebook, my business is Regenerate Health Medical Center, so we are on there. Twitter handle, Regenerate HMC. Instagram, Regenerate Health MC. So we're definitely out there. Love to talk to anybody in terms of health, in terms of how your exercise is affecting your health, how your hormones are affecting your health, your digestion, joints. We also do a lot with joint pain. We see a lot of athletes, but, also people that just want to incorporate movement, just have a healthier lifestyle. Really, we're just about educating, kind of like being on this show. And that's why it's so fun for me. And thank you so much for this opportunity. We really want people to feel good and just have great lives. That's what we're about.
That's awesome. No, it's been a pleasure having you on, and I was so happy to get through so many questions, and I'm going to have you come back on and go through the rest of the questions that I have that are going to come up as a result of this too. And I think it'd be fun if you're willing sometime maybe open it up to questions from the audience and have them email in stuff too.
Love to.
Awesome. I will put all of your connections and all of your Twitter and Instagram and handles and all that. I'll put those in the show notes for anyone who wants to go to thesquadroom.net/episode 44. You can check them out there if you didn't catch it here. If you're driving, you can check out the show notes. There will be links to everything we've talked about here today, and links to Dr. Ace's clinic and all of her, like I say, social media is there, so you can follow her there. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Squad Room, all one word. And if you want to, you can join our mailing list from your phone. If you're out and about and not at a computer right now, just text The Squad Room, all one word, to 44222. That's The Squad Room to 44222, and you get signed up for our mailing list right from your phone. You can check out, of course, this episode and all the past episodes at thesquadroom.net. And if you got a question, comment, something you want me to hear about from this show, or just an update from you, I'd love hearing from you. Email is garrett@thesquadroom.net. Again, want to thank audible.com for their support of the show. Go to audibletrial.com/The Squad Room for a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook of your choice. Maybe it's going to be a finance one like yours, or A Tribe was the one by Sebastian Younger that I recommend for this week. All right, everybody, thanks for listening, and stay safe. Awesome.